Hi Ian,
Hi
how
Peter,
are you?
nice to be here and seeing you. I think you've kept in touch very keenly over the last couple of weeks, and I'm sorry that we had to postpone this recording, but I'm really
It's
happy to be
it's
here now.
no problem. You are worth waiting for because I
Thank you.
have invited you as guest on the podcast Everyday Metallurgy because you are doing your podcast in India, named the Foundry Podcast.
Right, right,
And you have been traveling around to a lot of foundries over the last year, visiting them, making interviews, seeing their facilities. And I have followed you, and I'm a big fan of what you do.
Yeah, actually,
Uh,
I'm also a fan of your podcast. In fact, when I found that, actually, I did look around for a podcast around the world on Foundry, and I couldn't find one. But I did come across yours on Metallurgie, which I found
mhm.
was really interesting, and especially you and the objective as to why you're running this podcast of yours really moved me. I think it's a very humble objective that you have, and please do continue and take it ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And I reached out to you to go on to my podcast because when I look around in Europe, I see a lot of foundries that are closing down. I see a lot of companies moving their foundry activities from Europe or from China to India.
Right,
Uh, and what I have heard is that things are really growing in India. It's a boom,
right,
and my feeling, if we talk about innovation, some companies they try to keep their innovation activities at home, but I believe that innovation comes with your core activity. If you want to innovate your core activity, you have to be on your core activity and not in an office.
right.
So therefore, I believe I have a feeling that today innovation in foundry business is driven by Indian foundries and not by European or American mind heads sitting in the
Right.
office
Right. Very true.
and and that's why I invited you because this is just a feeling I have, and I would like to have your eyes on it because you have seen so many foundries over the last year, and you know what's going on. Uh, so that's why I think you are worth waiting for to bring on
Yeah.
board.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I have been to a lot of foundries and had the pleasure to sit down with a lot of foundry people in different parts of India over the last 10, 11 months that I've been doing the podcast. And
Mm,
I think to your point, the technology mainly, like I think this is something even you said earlier, where the technology was mainly European companies, Japanese companies, US companies coming to India when the industry was unorganized and bringing their technology with them. And now what is happening is they have partnered up with Indian entrepreneurs over the last couple of decades, where these technologies are being adapted and innovated further upon from the base level to cater to Indian conditions and Indian ways of production. So I think
mm,
that is mainly what is driving the innovation, the base level of technology that we acquired from the Japanese, like the high pressure molding lines, or from DISA in Europe. And what is
yeah.
now happening is the Indian entrepreneurs are further getting into that and changing it and innovating and just building on that. So that is, I think, what is mainly driving the innovation.
Mm, yeah. Um, so if we look into the casting itself and we go into the technology, what are the main products being made in the Indian foundries today?
Correct. So that's a very mixed answer. I'll try to answer it best on what I've seen and
Yeah.
not what I think is happening.
Mm,
So if you look at India, right, you have foundry clusters spread across the north, east, and west and south. So in the north, you have a typical foundry cluster, Rajkot, if you've heard of it. They make a lot of pump and valve castings. It's a very big hub for investment castings. So
Hmm.
that area would be mainly when you wanted pump and valve castings. Those sort of castings you could get very good there in steel, cast iron, those materials. But
Mm.
if you wanted automotive castings, now the entire automotive industry developed with proximity to Pune and a little bit in the south. So that is why you have Kolhapur, which is another foundry cluster in the on the western side, and that is mainly developed where you have it started off with cylinder heads and blocks and
Mm.
pistons and crankshafts, those sort of castings. But it has
Mm.
slowly developed and matured, and now they also make a lot of pump and valve castings, mainly which is driven by exports to
Okay.
to the EU and to the US and various
Mm.
other countries. So that is
Yeah.
mainly where the pocket is on the western region. You have Rajkot and Kolhapur. Then when you go towards the east was very well known for the railway castings because that's
Mm.
exactly where the industry developed. So there's a lot of very large old foundries. In fact, I think the foundry industry pretty much developed in the east in Calcutta,
Mm.
and that is where you get a lot of locomotive, railway castings, very large size castings, very
Okay.
large foundries there, old ones, pipes, a lot of ductile iron, pipe manufacturing companies are there,
Mm.
those sort of things. You also have a lot of foundries making drain covers and manhole covers. That's a very large industry in the east. And this is a theme that you'll see around India, where certain pockets and certain clusters make certain type of castings.
Yeah.
So picking the right cluster for the right type of component that you're looking for is really key here, and
Mm.
that will allow you to tap into that proper ecosystem where you have the right kind of talent available in that region to make those types of castings. So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
if you look at the south, then you have Coimbatore and Chennai. So that is also I wouldn't say mainly automotive driven, but automotive is a very large chunk of castings over there, and they also have a
Mm.
lot of pump and valve castings over there as well. So the south is a very large foundry cluster as well,
Mm.
mainly Coimbatore and Chennai.
Yeah. Uh, is it for a local Indian automotive production, or is it shipped abroad?
So we have a very large domestic market, and that is something that India has really benefited from over the last couple of years, and even more so now because it's mainly developing. Incomes are rising. Because of these incomes rising, there's a lot of push towards
Mm.
every family can now afford a car, thanks
Yeah.
to not only incomes rising but also the availability of finance and easy loans. So
Mm.
buy now pay later schemes. So this has
Yeah.
allowed everybody to increase their standard of living, much like in
Mm.
the West, and this is driving a very large domestic market as well. But certainly there are a lot of foundries that are also benefiting by this China plus one policy, which is something that has been a trend over the last couple of years now. So anybody in exports has really benefited, where they have a certain customer was buying 70% from China and 30% from India. They are now
Mhm.
bringing that number closer to 60-40, 50-50, or sometimes even 60-40 the other way around.
Ah. Okay.
So, so that is a way of sort of spreading the risk,
Yeah.
and that has been a push in the export market so far. So
Yeah.
all these factors are contributing to India's growth, the strong domestic market as well as the China plus one policy, and
Mm.
also Western countries are also developing at the same time.
Mm. Yeah.
So all these factors are playing for us.
Mm. And if we look into the products they make, what size are we going from? A few grams to how big?
Oh, anywhere. So I think mainly you have a few grams, which is a very high volume production, a couple of lakhs per piece, and then of
Mm.
course you have the very large casting, which is maybe 50 tons, 60 tons uh, type of castings, even bigger than that. So I've only
Mhm.
seen these type of castings, probably about 50 tons. Certainly there are castings which are even more than those. So, and again,
Mm.
they're spread across different places, right? Different pockets have these different foundries for all these parts because automotive, automotive industry also needs these stamping dies. It's a very large castings where they can stamp their doors and other
Mhm.
pieces. So
Yeah.
the tool room is another large purchaser of very large castings, and those are spread across the country all over.
Okay. And what are the alloys? Are we only talking spheroidized cast iron, or are we talking steel? Are we talking stainless steel? Is it also copper-based, aluminum-based alloys? What kind of foundries are there, and where do you see the growth?
Right. So I would assume, based on what I've seen, the large chunk of the market is, of course, ferrous-based, which would include your cast iron and would include your steel foundries. But
Hmm.
what is happening is aluminum is of course increasing in demand, and you'll see a lot of the largest market, of course, is the automotive market, and you'll see that aluminum is replacing a lot of steel components, a lot of cast iron on a normal production family car. So that is driving uh, the growth for the non-ferrous sector, especially aluminum. I was
Hmm.
also recently at a very big seminar, the first of its kind in India on magnesium. So this was
Hmm.
organized in Pune, and I think Mr. Martin Tauber, who's from Austria, he's the European representative for magnesium in the EU. He
Hmm.
was there as a chief guest, and I had a pleasure of interviewing him. So
Yeah.
I think he was probably episode 28, 29, 30. So he gave us a lot of insight on magnesium and how it's up and coming.
Hmm.
So there are some very, very big foundries in India that have invested in magnesium very, very early on for aircraft components like helicopters, light
Yeah. Yeah.
combat aircrafts,
Yeah.
also for cars now. So
Okay. Yeah.
that is
And
uh,
and and
that is also something that's
drones?
coming up. Drones, I'm not sure, but of course they would be driving demand. But from
Yeah.
what I saw is there's a company in Hyderabad called Bhaginagar Magnesium. So they have been doing a lot of pioneering work uh, with uh, with magnesium in recent years.
Hmm.
They're also part of a very large group that is mainly driven by copper.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, and now when we talk about a lot of different materials,
correct,
in Europe we mainly source our raw material from outside,
right,
uh, or it's scrap based. But I read recently that as the Indian steel market is growing,
right,
the access to scrap is not there yet, because you need to have some cycles, maybe some decades, before the
right.
amount of return scrap is large enough to have it running. So can you give some insight in where the raw materials are coming from?
Right. So I think we do not have a very good recycling industry, and that is something the government is also trying to push. In
Hmm.
fact, they've just started recently a very good policy for scrappage, whereas people can voluntarily scrap their car after about 15 or so years, and they get a good return on it. So there has recently been a push and a very subsidized a way of incentivizing this industry by the
Hmm.
government, where you now break apart the vehicle as to different components so that the resale value can be much higher, and it's also very easily recyclable, which is something that the West did earlier, but India was
Hmm.
not doing it as actively, and a lot of cars were just scrapped by selling them as one piece for weight.
Hmm.
So that is something that is really driving the recycling industry. There are a lot of companies that are specializing in recycling. Uh, they have their own very very large state of the art go downs, and I think recycling is a very large business that they're looking at. They're very
Hmm.
well funded as well. Of course, I think on the non-ferrous side, it still relies a lot on imports, where I think we don't have any copper reserves.
Hmm.
Copper, aluminium, all these things like in form of beverage cans.
Hmm.
Alloy wheels is something that India imports. So these are in very high demand where they are being imported because the consumption from the foundries is increasing.
Yeah.
So all these things are really driving demand, and also because there's such a large net export, there also needs to be this raw material coming into the industry into India
Hmm.
somewhere from the outside. Otherwise,
Yeah.
there'll be a mismatch in numbers. So there is a
Hmm.
very large import market as well in India, where a lot of raw materials have to be imported,
Hmm.
and that is what is happening. I think the recycling industry is picking up though, but I think the main one is still import. When you look at the iron side, though, there are very large smelting companies still that produce pig iron, which I think
Okay.
is a still very large component of cast iron today. So that is pretty much a very big industry. Also, again, most of them in the east of India, towards Calcutta.
Yeah.
So that is where
In
we are getting
blast
our raw material.
furnaces, do they produce it in blast furnaces?
I'm not really sure about the smelting process because, again,
Hmm.
I'm largely visiting foundries making castings.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
fair.
would assume, yeah.
Yeah. Mm. And we often in Europe combine our sourcing with our energy, and we often call that sustainability, and we talk about carbon emissions. Uh, how do you see that? How the energy supply? It's electricity. You melt it mainly with electricity. I
So
could
I
imagine.
have a really good point to add here.
Yeah.
So I think India had declared by 2030 or 2040 they would be almost 50% relying on green energy, which is wind and solar. And
Mm.
I think we're going to reach that target a lot sooner. I'm not sure whether it was 30 or 40, but as on
Mm.
this date, right now it's 2025 April. We are about 45% plus on green energy alone as a country. So that
Wow.
has been something that's really remarkable. And
Yeah.
again, you see this as something that the government has done extremely well, where we have got large subsidies to put up not only wind farms but also solar farms, where
Yeah.
foundries are putting up solar farms at a subsidized location, where there's a
Okay.
lot of
They have their own behind the meter.
correct, correct.
Yeah.
They all have their own solar plants, where
Mm.
those solar plants are selling power to the grid,
Yes.
facilitating villages nearby and
Hmm.
enabling that the entrepreneur invests in the technology rather than the government. And they get the effect of that subsidy wherever their plant is located. So their factory could be 100 200 kilometers away from that solar farm, but
Ah.
the government basically buys the solar from them at the source and
Mm.
reimburses them where their factory is. So
Mm.
that is how that industry is playing. So then it's a really good move because if the entrepreneurs themselves are investing into the technology and the government is
Mm.
benefiting by spreading the delegating the task to the foundries.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how this entire push is going to green energy.
Yeah. It's very uplifting because I often hear people say that, oh, in India they produce the electrical power with coal. They fire coal, and
It was
therefore
true. It still is. It's still a large percentage because when you look at 45% of from green energy, it's a large chunk.
mm,
But what makes up the remaining 55%? Right? It's still driven by fossil fuels and of course a little bit of hydro. So that number is decreasing as we speak, and I
mm,
think I expect it to go further a lot lower in a couple of years based on the incentives that they're receiving for wind and solar.
yeah. Yeah, it's not, and when was the plan to be fully? Do you have a plan for the country to be fully
I think
sustainable?
I have to Google this because it's better to fact check it. I think it was 20.
Yeah,
I,
that's very. um, while you are looking, I am also curious to learn a little more about if I was right in my view of innovation. Do innovation move with the core process? So do you have some examples you could share with us where new innovations has taken place in the foundry business?
right. So I think our podcast is mainly driven by somebody doing something new and wanting a channel to talk about it. So every now and then, it's not uncommon for us to receive a message from somebody, hey, we're doing something new, come and cover us. So
Hmm.
innovations is something that our channel is thriving on. And very early on, we had a chance to visit a couple of foundries, very actively leading the game in 3D printing. So
Hmm.
although 3D printing in its I mean much more common sense is started off by polymer printing. You
Mm.
have today of course, foundries printing sand. So sand printing is something that is really changing the game here. And
Yeah.
I think we've done 2 or 3 podcasts or 4 podcasts maybe on 3D printing alone. Various companies who are experts in the game. So the way sand 3D printing is working is it allows somebody to print a mold the size of maybe 1 or 2 rooms. Even if the printer isn't that big, they can print small chunks, assemble them together,
Yeah.
stick them together, and
Mm.
get a prototype ready for a very, very large casting in a couple of days or weeks, whereas the pattern and die making would alone account for a couple of months.
Yeah.
So that's how quickly prototyping has now come into production. And
Mm.
these foundries are not only printing molds for themselves, but they're also selling the molds to other foundries.
Okay.
So other found, in fact, I think it was a 60-40 split, that 60% of their production was in-house, 40% was outsourced.
Mm.
So 40% of their production is basically given to other foundries who want to take advantage of the technology and can prototype at a much faster speed. So that is also driving, the economy forward, and it's a very great
Mm.
innovation that's come ahead.
Yeah. Wow. That was new for me. I have seen 3D printing of sand molds. Is it the core or is the entire sandbox that is printed?
Everything, the entire mold,
Okay. Uh,
as well as
but
the core. So the core is also printed and assembled inside.
yeah, mm, that was interesting.
So much so
Um,
that they're also going a step further and are now reducing the cost, because, as you know, 3D printing is an expensive process.
mhm,
It's still quite expensive, but when you compare it to prototyping, of course, it's very cheap. But if you want to move it into production, then you have to bring down the cost, right? Because the
mm,
time is a lot,
yeah.
and the sand is expensive. So what Foundry is also doing is they're printing certain portions in with 3D and certain portions in a conventional process, so that it's sort of like a hybrid model.
Mm,
That is sort of bringing down the cost. Even if it's 30-40% reduction in cost, it's still very large number. So
yeah.
that is what I've been able to witness. It's very nice because the equipment themselves were not built for these things, but it's again what I said, like foreign technology is coming in, and Indian entrepreneurs are putting their minds to the base level innovation, and then further
Mm,
developing the process to suit the Indian industry and the needs of the industry.
yeah. And do they also make innovation within the digital world? So are they using artificial intelligence? Are they making casting simulations? I've been visiting Magmasoft some years ago to see how they can simulate on that. And I think originally the Magmasoft core program was developed at the Danish Technical University together with the guys from Germany.
Right,
Uh,
right,
so I have a little heart in this simulation of
right.
of casting. So, but is it something they do, or is it
Right.
just
So
running,
I
running,
will
running?
add a little bit of light to that. So first, we'll go into the simulation part since you're on that subject. So
Mm.
I have been fortunate last year to come across. Uh, I mean, do you know Mr. Christian Kleberg from Austria?
Nope.
So he actually had come to an exhibition in India in Coimbatore, and that is
Mm.
where we got talking. Where they were trying to they have a software which is sort of like an ERP, but it digitizes the processes at a foundry. So they take all the various variables and all the various inputs at different cycles, and they provide like a very good interface where everything is clear and organized completely. So he in
Mm.
fact was working with, I think, Magma, if I'm not right, if I'm not
Okay.
wrong,
Yeah.
in the recent past. That was
Mm.
where he basically got his knowledge and expertise on digitalization. So we'll
Mm.
be having him on the podcast very soon. In fact, he wants to do it remote, like exactly like we're doing it now. And I would prefer to still take interviews in person because I really enjoy meeting someone face to face, connecting with them, sitting in a
Yeah.
room, thrashing about few topics. But
Hmm.
I think this is new for me, doing it on camera, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good experience. So I'll probably do a lot more of them like this. but he's actively doing a lot of digitization. There are a lot of other companies in India where they have digitized certain processes with IoT. Getting a lot of data and basically organizing it in a systematic manner, which it can be interpreted and studied and taken action on. So that is a lot of companies doing that. When you come to the artificial intelligence, there has been this company that we interviewed. I think it was episode number 20 or 22 or 19, somewhere like that, with this company from Chennai. I think CY's AI is what they're called. They have been able to take advantage of optics on your CCTV cameras and identify what process of the furnace was currently ongoing, whether it was charging, whether it was tapping, whether it was your cleaning of slag, whether the worker was wearing a hat, a helmet, whether he's wearing gloves. So all these processes were being recorded and monitored, and with timestamps, you could get this data in real time. So that was a really good episode I did with them in Chennai. And it also has the ability to hard stop a machine if the safety compliances are breached. Whereas a certain person was maybe approaching a CNC machine and he's not wearing his gloves, automatically the software can hard stop the machine. So there's a lot of AI technology going into that, and that is also very interesting to be with them.
I've never seen that used before. Right. I know in China they are a lot more open to use the CCTV cameras, where in Europe we're more afraid of it. We are more than nobody are allowed to see that I have been here. It's like the same on YouTube. I have asked some of my followers, did you like the episode? And yeah. Did you like it? No. Why not? I don't want to show that I have been there.
Okay.
So the people are more hesitant to take up new technologies.
Correct.
And with this speed the industry has today, if you take your future glasses on and you try to vision what will happen in the Indian foundry business over the next 5-10 years, has it peaked and is it just running as it is today? Or do you think new evolutions or revolutions will happen in the industry over the next 10 years?
Correct. So I wish I had a fortune teller's crystal ball, which I don't, unfortunately. But if I did,
I have these future glasses. You can borrow my future glasses.
Yeah. So anyway, but the second best thing is to be on the floor and when you go to these foundries and foundries that the founders are really technologically driven, they're willing to adopt technology at a very fast pace and keep trying new things. You get a certain amount of optimism that just transfers to you just by meeting and sitting with these people, and that's why I like to like boots on the ground sort of approach, where I fly out to foundries and I meet them and interview them in person. So you can gauge the optimism in the country just by being to these foundries. And I think, of course, I like to say the future is very bright. But what is mainly driving the growth is, of course, one, a very, very large domestic market, which I alluded to earlier. But also, if you look at the Chinese production of castings, which I believe the last time I checked, it was some 12, 13 million tons of castings. And I think India was probably 1/3, 1/4 of that. So just the difference between the first, the global highest manufacturer of castings and the second one is such a huge amount that if I just took out 20%, 30% of China's population of production, and brought it to India, that alone would double our market. So that is huge scope anyway. Whether the demand for casting goes up or not, just the shift in transfer of casting and capacity from China to India alone is enough to double our industry. So if that doesn't sound like optimism, I don't know what else does.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, and as we talked about initially, the main objective of my podcast is to show the young people that this business is not done yet. There's
Right.
still a lot of things to work on. There are a lot of things to develop.
Right.
It will not be over. It will absolutely grow. So if you have doubt in what you would study, uh, then material science
Correct.
is top of the shelf
So
to
I have a
secure a
lot.
future job.
I have a point to add there. So when I entered the industry, I was mainly one of these people, as you said, who wanted to do things with computers, who wanted to do things with software,
Mm,
I wanted I love marketing, so I wanted to go into this sort of area of expertise, and I did struggle a lot. So for the
mhm,
first 2-3 years of my career, I played music. I did some I started some online businesses like a blog and other various stuff before
mm,
my father finally kicked me off, and he sent me to work, I think about 600-700 kilometers away at a cast iron foundry, and just to get 3 months of experience away from home. And I was about 21, 22 at the time, 10
yeah.
years back. And I remember being on my bike early morning going to the factory, and I
Mm,
spotted this huge engine block, which was I think a 12-cylinder a truck engine block. I think it was probably a man trucks.
mhm,
They used to manufacture them back then, but I think they've stopped now. So
mm,
this huge engine block being transported on this auto, I mean this tempo in front of me, and
mm,
I just saw just the enormity of it, and the way it was, the craftsmanship that went into it. I felt really proud to possibly, my family has been in this in the foundry industry. Unfortunately, they closed in 2010-11, much before I could enter the workforce. But I
mm,
felt like a certain amount of calling towards this industry, which I wouldn't say obligated to get into, but I felt like, I should be doing something with my family legacy and going into the foundry industry in some way or the other. So that was when I started to look at it seriously. And 10 years later, uh, now what I'm just doing is adding my software and marketing twist to the industry that I've been in. So for
yeah.
people who are maybe, a little scared about entering the industry, or maybe they might view it as not as fruitful, uh, what you can do is you can learn the basics of Foundry, and you can apply your own ingenuity and your own sort of experiences and skill sets to expand on that. So you might not be the best operations person at Foundry, you might not be the best a foreman, you might not be the best plant manager, but
Mm,
certainly if you're good at marketing, you can help sell a good product, right? There are
mm,
plenty of very good Foundry products that are very newly innovative products that could really help foundries. And you need someone who's able to understand the product, how it performs, how it's going to help foundries to sell them, right?
yeah.
So I wouldn't say the foundry industry only needs people who can work with their hands and people
Mm,
who are very good at managing operations. You still need marketing people. People have to sell
yeah.
good products.
Mm,
People are going to be required in finance, because you
yeah.
ultimately foundries need to be profitable, otherwise they will close down. You still need people who can understand AI and apply it to a foundry industry. So when you have someone who's very good at artificial intelligence and they're from a foundry background, you have a very deadly combination. So I would say that this stacking of skill sets is something that maybe young people could look at, and
Yeah.
not only as a white or black sort of equation where they either go into the foundry industry and work as an operations manager or on the shop floor, as opposed to go to a white collar job. They could take like
Mm.
a half approach where they merge their skill sets and whatever they're really good at with the foundry experience, and create a really successful career for themselves.
Wonderful. I love this. I would like that to be the final words because you just nailed it.
Thank you.
How to make a fantastic living
Doing what you
in the
love.
future,
Right.
working with more complex and more mixed, and not
Correct.
seeing the world black and white.
And
Uh,
essentially that's what I'm doing today. So I have the 10 years of experience, working as an employee at a foundry, 5 years running my own foundry, and now I'm just bringing back the marketing and talking to people and traveling, the real love for travel and meeting people that I have, and I'm just merging it with my foundry background and trying to do something with it. So let's see where it goes.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, but
No.
the future looks bright.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation. And people, they have to watch your podcast as well. So could you just put the last words on where they can find the podcast?
So you can
And
basically just go to YouTube and type in Foundry Podcast, and it will pretty much come up all over the place. We kept it simple. Foundry Podcast. They're a podcast on the foundry industry. That's it. Very simple.
fantastic. Thank you again. I
Thank you,
enjoyed the
Peter. I
conversation.
really appreciate you inviting me, and I think you're my first overseas guest. You're also my first remote guest. So
Yeah.
I'd really love to host you in India when you come here. We're in Mumbai. And thank you so much. Please continue what you're doing, and you're doing an amazing job by getting the newer entrants into the industry coming in, especially where you're at in the I think Netherlands, right?
Denmark.
Denmark. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for connecting with me, and I hope I did justice to the questions that you asked me.
It was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.